the Jeffrey pine I was talking about. Yeah, this one's got some girth to it. It's not an extremely old tree, but definitely has had some staying power over here. Actually, it's almost like it. Actually, the base is less girthy than about a third of the way up the tree. This is definitely an older tree. Definitely not lacking, I'll tell you that. Definitely has some girth to it. And has a little height. I suspect this is probably close to about 100 feet tall. Some of these trees, a lot of the Jeffrey pines are a little bit smaller, more humble sized, as opposed to where you would expect, like in the San Bernardino mountains. I've shown you some pretty big Jeffrey pines in the San Bernardinos, and some in the Sierras. But I'm just gonna go a little bit off. I'm not gonna do a full bushwhack or anything, but I definitely want to get close to the trunk of this tree. This one definitely has some girth to it. This is definitely a very nice Jeffrey pine. This tree does have some decent girth to it. So this one, see, it's because that's why I like to get a little bit closer to these trees to really be able to appreciate them. But yeah, this is definitely a nice older Jeffrey pine right here. An absolute gorgeous tree. Look at, branches are large. A lot of times pine tree branches are pretty small usually. Pine tree branches are pretty small no matter how big the trees are. Usually their branches are pretty small for some reason on pine trees. But even some of the branches are quite large. Larger than usual for pine trees. Oh, what a beautiful tree. This is absolutely awesome. And this one here's got a little height to it as well. This Jeffrey pine right here. That's a nice, handsome tree. And that's definitely a much younger tree, I can tell. Much younger tree. I'm surprised this one doesn't have wider bark plates on it, because it's not always the case, but a lot of times the older trees will have wider bark plates. This one has some plating. As you can see here, there's some plates. But usually if you're looking at the other relative, the ponderosas will often have significantly wider bark plates than Jeffrey pines. But I have seen Jeffrey pines with pretty wide bark plates too. There's just a lot of morphological difference between individual trees. This one doesn't seem to have a lot of wider plating action. It seems to be sticking more to its more furrowed structure with very narrow plates and more furrowing than plating. Which furrowing and plating are related. It's just I consider it more plating when the ridges, the outer surfaces are wider. That's would be I consider more plating. It does have a little plating, as you see here. Pretty typical cinnamon brown for the bark plates. That one there really doesn't have really much of any plating at all. It's more furrowed. Yeah, this is a very stately, old, noble tree here that's been watching out over this meadow for probably a couple hundred years. It maybe not being I don't know if it's an extremely old growth tree, but it definitely has some old growth. It definitely has some staying power and some time in. This tree has been in service for quite a while, and it does not show any signs of slowing down. And the cool thing about this one is this one's got some pretty long needles. Sometimes Jeffrey pines will have some pretty long needles. These ones here tend to have more regular sized pine needles, but this one here has got some slightly longer ones. Kind of like its close relative, the coulter pine. Coulter pines tend to have long needles. And that's not always the case either. If they're in a drier location than they normally would be expected to be, they would have shorter needles, smaller needles, because it's a drought adaptation. But yeah, that Jeffrey pine's got some pretty large needles. Pretty long needles on them. Yeah, look at that. And you can tell this tree's been through quite a bit. Pretty sure this tree's been struck by lightning. Probably been struck by fierce winds. So you can see a lot of branch breakage along this tree. And it might have had a second leader. I can see a big scar right up there. This might have had a second leader, and that's why it seems to be leaning this way. I think it's because it had a second leader at some point. Wow, what a monumentous tree. I'm gonna get a couple pictures of this tree, talk a little bit more about it before I start moving on with the rest of my day. I'm just kind of fixated on this beauty. So yeah, so I'm looking at this, thinking that this had to have been a multiple leader tree, especially because it's kind of flat on this side, and it definitely doesn't appear to have any wind flagging. Wind flagging is when trees are bent or favor growth on the leeward side of the wind, because in areas where the wind is fierce on a nearly consistent basis, it kind of hurts the growth of the tree that faces right into the windward side. So this does not appear to be flagging, but I'm pretty sure that big scar up there, let's see if I can zoom into it again, appears to be from a leader that was broken off quite a bit of time ago, actually. Yeah, right there. You can see there's a big scar up there. That had to have been another leader. Especially the way the scar is looking, the way it's so long from up to down latitudinally is probably due to the fact that there was a leader that broke off some time ago. But yeah, so I'm thinking about separating these clips itself from the video, and making a separate video out of them as another ode to Jeffrey pine. So this will be part of my hiking video, but this will also be split off into its own video. So I guess we can call this another ode to Jeffrey pine, the second one I've done this season. And here's this other beautiful Jeffrey pine right here. This one tends to have a little bit more height to it and a little bit younger age. And here we go. No real plating, just some rough ridging. So this is definitely not an old growth tree. That is definitely an older growth tree. But this one here, yeah, this one's got some height to it. This was probably about 110, 115 feet tall, probably, I would assume. Yeah, this is a magnificent tree here. This is a beauty. But yeah, look at that. Yeah, you could tell that tree had more biomass to it. Here's hoping that this tree lasts another long time in good health. So we'll consider this another ode to Jeffrey pine. So if you're watching the ode video, thanks for watching. If you're watching these clips on the hiking video, thanks for watching thus far. And I will continue on with my hike.